Monday morning, Market Chameleons and everyone joining us for the first time. Thanks for coming by and checking out the Market Chameleon pre-market show with this man, Dimitri Pargamonic. How you doing, D?
Good morning, Will. How are you?
Great. You want to start with a disclaimer?
Good morning, everyone. Before we get started, keep in mind, Will and I, Market Chameleon, we're not a registered investment advisor. We're not a broker dealer. We're not telling you what to do. We're just sharing ideas. If you need advice, call your registered investment advisor. Call your broker. That's what they're there for, to give you advice, provide you with guidance. There's the disclaimer.
Excellent.
And I'm going to share my screen. While I'm doing that, if anyone's joining us for the first time, Will and I, we do these shows in the morning to help answer questions you have about Market Chameleon tools, data, or analytics. If you want to come on a show and ask your question live, there is a link to Zoom on that live chat on YouTube. So click on that. It takes you over to Zoom. There's a button, raise your hand, click on that. Once we let you in, you could ask your question live and direct. If you prefer to type in your question, just type that question into the live chat on YouTube. Will's watching it. He'll read it back to me. And while we're waiting for more people to join or put their questions in, what we'll do is start out taking a look at the pre-market report, see if we could get some insights on stocks that are trading in a pre-market hours. Well, if you do get questions, stop me and let me know. I'll take those questions after the pre-market report. If we don't have questions, I'll navigate to a different part of the website, see if we could take a particular tool, get some insights from that tool.
Perfect.
All right. So let's start out with the pre-market report. These are stocks that are trading in the pre-market hours. We have a list of our most active stocks, our biggest percentage gainers, biggest percentage decliners. Coming down here, I see 28 stocks made our percentage gainers list, 20 on the decliners. So that's, from that perspective, a slightly bullish bias at the open. Kind of even, it's not a big list, but if you look closely at the stocks that are making the list, you'll see there are low cap stocks in there, or ETFs in there. It could be a closed-end funds, a leverage product, a preferred stock, anything that's listed on a major U.S. exchange. And if it's trading in pre-market hours and it meets our thresholds, it can make this list. And what we'd want to do is narrow down this list to a smaller group of stocks to see what's going on, get a little bit more focused insights. And what we'll do is use the filters here above. I'm going to use this one in ETF. And click on that. And when you click on that filter, you get a drop down list to choose from. And you'll see there are sector ETFs in there, a couple broad-based ETFs. The top one, SPY, that's the S&P 500 ETF. Let's click on that. And when you do that, the list below, let's see, I think I have to refresh my screen here. I had it open for too long. Let me refresh my screen, do that again. In ETF, I'm going to click on SPY, and you see that the list below got filtered by stocks that are holdings in the ETF, in the SPY ETF. And here we see 4 stocks made our percentage gainers list, 3 on the decliners. And that's pretty much, even there. So I would say we're looking at a flat opening so far. And Will, you did mention we're going to have a lot of earnings coming up this week. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think Meta, maybe Amazon, plus a lot of those regional banks. First Republic being the big one.
So I'm going to go. Let me just see. Here's the earnings calendar. So, starting out today, 58 stocks that we're tracking. Tomorrow, 116. April 26th, 208. 254, April 27th. So let's just see. Let me do this. I'm going to go to earnings and let me go to the summary tables here. And if we look at the list over here, full report next 2 weeks, this gives us a list of stocks that are coming up with earnings in the next 2 weeks. And here we got McDonald's tomorrow, KMB, DHR. You said some of the big techs. So Microsoft here also coming up tomorrow after the market close, Google. So these are going to be some big ones, especially, we had a huge rally so far in the tech sector this year. So we'll see what's coming up from there. Microsoft will be interesting because they've invested in that Chat GPT, OpenAI. I'm sure there's going to be questions on that. So that could be an interesting one tomorrow. And I think
that is interesting.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on that, see what they say. I'm sure they're going to have a lot of questions on that. And, I know that all weekend, things on my feed have been popping up with Chat GPT, either people using it and they're posting how they're using it on YouTube, on the social media websites. So a lot of people are excited about it. I'm going to take a look. I'm going to ask our developers just to take a look at how, it's possible to integrate a website like ours into ChatGPT and what are potential use cases. I actually had an assignment from my developer to write down what I think some of the use cases would be. So, I just jotted down a few of them, and we'll take a look this week to see if we could use their API for any of the tasks that we do, if it could help out. If we have no questions, Will, what I might do is maybe take a look at the SPY volatility.
Perfect. Actually, just so everyone knows, now that you mentioned it, because I'm creating an email. We have a webinar the second Tuesday in May with interactive brokers, and I think you're talking about historical versus implied volatilities. I'll put that link in the chat so everyone can register for that.
Okay. Thanks, Will. So what we could do today is talk about, maybe take a look at the SPY volatility, because even with inflation, with interest rates at 5% and or they're going to be 5%, we believe, after this next Fed meeting, and all this uncertainty, and we got like the geopolitical risks in Russia, now tensions with China. But given all that, and with high valuations, we could see here that the implied volatility is very low. Looking at the last year, we're really on the low end, in the 1 percentile rank. So what we could do is just kind of take a look at that volatility, and let's take a look at this report seasonality, just to get some insights, what it's doing this year, what it's usually done in the past this time of year, calendar year, and maybe compare it to the realized volatility. And this page here, the seasonal volatility, this top graph here, this shows how the implied volatility tended to do over the course of a year. So it's basically taking the median implied volatility, or this is the average implied volatility over the last 10 years by calendar day, right? And you could take a look at how, certain periods of the year it's higher, certain periods of the year, like over here in the summertime, it's lower, and this gives us kind of a seasonality look. These other bars here, those are also seasonal volume trends. So we could kind of spot where option volumes tend to come in. And it looks like over here in the summertime, especially July, looks like that month, implied volatility comes in. People are going away for the summer. A lot of people, whatever, go to their Hamptons homes or enjoy their summers. So what we tend to see is implied volatilities come in, option volumes also are much lower, and then it starts to kind of pick up after people start coming back August, September. Here in November, December, during the holidays, we kind of take dips again. So this is how the implied volatility looks like by calendar day, calendar month. All right, given historicals. And I think, we do see this pop up in March, and that's when the COVID hit. So I think that's pulling it up as well up here. Okay. So where are we today? In April, we're right here, 15.7. So that's the average so far implied volatility in the month of April. We're not quite finished. We still got some time, a little bit of time to go, a week. But that's where we are now, 15.7. So if we come down here and compare that to average values, we're right in line. So this month has been, right on the average. The median implied volatility, 12.9. All right, so if we just wanted to look at the table and the numbers, let's take the median implied vol. So that's the implied volatility level right in the middle, right? So because the average could get pulled up or down due to any outliers. And we could see here that, from January, this is what it tends to do, starts to come in. March, then April, May, June, kind of steady there, drops in July, starts heading back up in August, September. So far, the dip in implied volatility, it's something that we usually see historically, but, given the circumstances, we are, I feel, still very low. Seems like very low given the circumstances that we're experiencing now, because it's just a lot of uncertainty here. To analyze it down further, let's go down to this table. And this here breaks each calendar month by 4 different metrics. How did the month start? Where was the implied volatility right at the start of the month? How high did it get between now and end of the month? How low did it get, and where did we finish off? So in April, we're not quite finished. This is what we're up to right now. Okay, we started out implied volatility 16.8, hit a high of 17.1, low 14.1, and we're kind of near that low, 14.4. So that's how this current month in 2023. We compare that to historicals, on average started out 17.1. You could see that the range here was big, from 20.2 to 12.7, as low as 12.7. And it did tend to finish lower from the start. So we're starting at 17.1, ending at 15.4. So that's an indicator that as the month progressed, by the end of that month, the implied volatility tended to come in. All right, and we're doing something similar this month. All right. And you could see so far this month, the implied volatility range was tighter than the historical average. Here's the median. So the median is a little bit tighter, but about 3.3 vol click differential. if we wanted to come down further, here we could start taking a look at where the implied volatility was relative to the realized volatility, right? So the implied volatility, that's coming from the options prices. That's where the market was forecasting implied the volatility. We could compare that to where the realized volatility was. So here we could see that if we took the average daily implied volatility versus the realized volatility, the implied vols have so far been overestimating the realized vol by 51%. So if we use close to close the realized vol, we could see that the implied vols has been trending above those realized volatilities, which historically, on average, that's what it tended to do by 15%. Here we're up about 51%. Okay, so if we could compare, we'll see that realized volatility tended to be higher in January than the implied vols. February, I'm sorry, not it's taken the median of these. But on the average, tended to be higher here, higher there, and lower here in April. Okay. But that's where we are right now. So you could see that the realized vol has been coming in as well. And even though implied vol is coming in, so has the realized volatility. And that implied vol is still trending above the realized vol. What about if we just measured the start of the month? So the start of the month, that's forecasting what the average implied volatility will be from the start to the end. So we could see the start of the month, the forecast was 16.8. So far we're at 10.4. So that overestimated by 62%. All right, so that's just kind of a visual of getting how did the volatility tend to do, implied vols, and where are the implied vols, what are they doing today versus historicals, and then we compared the realized volatilities versus the implieds, just to get some insights what's going on there. Again, right now our volatility, we're in very subdued 1 percentile rank. So let me see here. So this is where we are now. This is the implied volatility for the year. So you can see this graph coming in. We could compare that to the moving averages. This is the 20-day moving average. So right now, implied volatility is trending below the 20-day moving average, pulling it down. And let's compare that to the historical 20-day. So you can see here the historical, has been coming into. That's what that looks like. That's the 20-day historical realized vol. Here's the 252-day. So you can see the 252-day realized vols above those levels. So let me see. I guess if there are no questions coming in, I'm going to leave it at that. We took a look at the implied volatilities from a couple different perspectives. If we don't have any questions, maybe we'll just stop there. You're on mute, Will. If you're talking, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. It was muted because I was sneezing. We had a question from Rob about the thumb. Let me go back to it. Rob was asking, I don't see the tabs that are on Dimitri's chart. Is this an internal test, or could he go through the clicks?
You know what? Actually, I think these seasonalities, I think that these are still my internal tests. So I think these tables are things that I test because I have to come back and make it a little bit prettier so you guys understand it with the charts and so forth. So if I'm moving down here, these may still be my internal. I believe they are.
All right. Well, there you go. There are no other questions. Remember, everyone, thumbs up are always appreciated. subscribe to the YouTube channel. D, before we go, I want you to hear something. You tell me if you've heard it before or what it is. All right.
Okay.
You there?
Yep. What
Any
is it?
guesses?
I didn't hear anything.
Oh, really? Nothing? Did anyone hear that? Let me try that again. See if you hear it.
I don't hear anything.
Well, it's strange that it's not coming up because I'm playing it, but maybe my mic isn't picking it up. But anyways,
Okay.
I recommend everyone listen to it. One of our daily listeners, Chuck from Minnesota, he lives on a lake. He had a loon pop in over the weekend, and the sound, he mentioned it, and the sound it makes is so interesting. You can imagine if you heard it late at night and never heard, like if you went on vacation to a lake house
Yeah.
and you heard it, you would think like kids would be running in and hiding with you because it's a little spooky. But
Oh, really?
I wanted everyone to
Oh,
hear
that's
it. He
interesting.
did mention it, and I apologize. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm on one browser and it's not picking up on the mute, but it is pretty interesting. I recommend everyone bring up a loon sound. If you've never heard it before, it's quite an experience. Great job, D. Remember, I put the next webinar coming up with Interactive Brokers, always the second Tuesday of every month. And I think that's implied versus historical volatility. So should be very interesting. Awesome job, D. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Stay safe out there. Have a great trading day. Hope to see you guys tomorrow.
Trade in peace, chameleons. Have a great day. Thanks, D. Bye.
Bye, Ren.